But here's the political trichotomy. You have individualism on the upper right, absolutism on the lower right, and then communism on the left. Now, what this chart represents are the way each point of the triangle does not see a difference between the other 2 points of the triangle. So this model is basically how the world is, but we have a false left versus right dichotomy model. Now, that dichotomy model is outdated and archaic, much in the same way that Newtonian physics is archaic and outdated. We have this, relativity and quantum mechanics, which is much more accurate to reality, but we are still operating, as it were, in a false, outdated model of left versus right. So every point of the triangle sees themselves as the only true, when it comes to absolutism versus individualism, they both see themselves as the only true right, and they see the other two as the same. So I'll start with individualism. So individualists, what does communism and absolutism share? They're both totalitarian. The absolutists want kings or fascism or something. They want some form of totalitarian government. For different reasons in the communists, but they both favor totalitarianism. So the individualist sees the totalitarianism which the absolutist and the communist share, and so they label both sides as totalitarian, authoritarian, or statist. So when somebody starts shouting statist at someone, you know that they're an individualist. Now, what about communists? What does individualism and absolutism share? Well, they share elitism and Darwinism. Both individualists and absolutists believe in natural hierarchy and nature, whereas communists reject both. So they see both individualist and absolutist favoring elitism and Darwinism, and they label both of them as reactionaries, fascists, and racists. This is why, to a communist, everybody's a Nazi. Because to a communist, you are. Like, you might laugh and be like, what? I believe in small government. A small government Nazi, haha, it is to laugh. But you believe in elitism and Darwinism, don't you? That makes you a racist and thus a Nazi. So from their perspective, it makes sense. Now, from the absolutist perspective, what does communism and individualism share? Well, they share a belief more or less in democracy and republicanism. Now, to an absolutist, democracy and republicanism represents degeneracy, liberalism, and globalism. And so when you hear people talk about global homo and the shit libs and degeneracy, they're absolutists. And they say that shit all the fucking time. It's like a mating call. And so that's just how absolutists talk. That's the terms they're used to, and this is why they think that way. From their perspective, they see democracy and republicanism, which communism and individualism kind of share, as the same thing, in the same way that communists see the individualists and the absolutists supporting elitism and Darwinism as being fascism, and how the individualist sees the communist and the fascist as totalitarian and the same. Like, you ask somebody who's an individualist, what's the difference between communism and fascism? They'll say it's the same thing. Now you ask an absolutist, what's the difference between communism and fascism? And they'll fucking talk your ear off for an hour about how fascism wasn't that bad, and how communism's the real bad thing, and all this other shit. Because to them, there is a difference. But to you as an individualist, you just see them both as the same thing. Now, there's another chart that's probably a little bit easier to read that I can share with you to help make this point. Here we go. All right, so here, oh gosh, now I gotta resize it again. So again, here is how the false left versus right dichotomy, man, my voice just cracked, I apologize. Here's how that looks to the different points of the trichotomy. So we'll start with the absolutists. The absolutists, on the far right, they see monarchism. And the far left, they have communism. Now, the way they define left versus right, and to their point, this is the traditional way. They define the traditional right as reactionary, in support of tradition and stability, and they see the left as revolutionary, who stands for change and degeneracy. So if you're a reactionary, you're trying to maintain the old order, and if you're a revolutionary, you're a leftist. Now, this means that the Founding Fathers, because they rebelled against King George, were fundamentally leftist, because they were revolutionaries. So This is just a reactionary, absolutist mentality. This is how they define left versus right. So you have moderates in the middle, then Republicans, fascists, and monarchists on the right, and on the left you have Democrats, progressives, socialists, and communists. Now, to an individualist, going down one space, an individualist defines left versus right as more government versus less government. So a leftist government is highly collectivistic, representing more government and less freedom, whereas the more right-wing a government becomes, the smaller the government until you have no government. So the highest form of right-wing government would be anarchy, no government. And on the far left, you have fascism, communism, monarchism, oligarchs. Any form of total government would be leftist to an individualist. So on the middle you have moderates, and on the right you have Republicans, libertarians, and anarchists. And on the left you have Democrats, socialists, communists, fascists, all this other shit. Now this is why, like, libertarians are a very American thing. Like, back when I was with the Tea Party, we kind of understood that left versus right meant something different in Europe than it did in America. In Europe, most left versus right debates are between absolutists and communists. Whereas in America, you have more of an individualist perspective of left versus right. So this is how, well, traditionally, because again, the founding fathers were revolutionaries. By the reactionary absolutist standpoint, they would be leftist. So this is individualist standpoint, very American standpoint. Now, what about the communists? To a communist, the far left equals equality, whereas the far right equals elitism. So in the middle, you actually have Democrats. Democrats are considered the middle according to a communist, with moderates and Republicans being right-wing, and then dictatorships, kings, racists, Nazis, any form of elitist hierarchy would be the far right. Which is why anyone who believes in any kind of differences, who's a racist, is automatically an extreme right-wing fascist Nazi. Now, on the left, you have progressivism, socialism, communism, and then to a leftist, they believe anarchism is basically true equality. Now, obviously, if you understand history, the pursuit of leftist ideals never actually get to anarchism, because in order to get to this fabled, utopia of communism, you have to abolish private property. Well, how can you do that without government? How do you stop people from having property other than by taking it from them with force? So you need a government to do that. And then how do you get from this all-powerful government that takes away everyone's private property to no government? So it's, again, but the problem is with the communists, their ideal is antithetical to nature. It makes no sense. It doesn't even work on paper. Whereas the individualist standpoint, anarchy and freedom is nature. It's not just possible, it's normal. It is the natural state of nature is freedom and anarchy. Like, government was instituted by humans artificially. It's a social construct. So in nature, everyone is free and there's no government. So, like, it's completely in line with nature. It is nature. Anyway, so this is how the 3 points of the trichotomy see the left and the right. And this is why we have a lot of interesting conversations when it comes to who's the left, who's the right. Now, going back to Academic Agent and his whole thing about the weakness of the libertarian argument against socialism, he's approaching it from a reactionary, absolutist perspective. And it's because he's European. The absolutist perspective of left versus right is effectively the European perspective. So Academic Agent is European, and he approaches the left versus right dichotomy from that perspective, and he's also a reactionary absolutist. So nothing he says surprises me. It's just he thinks he's objectively right. But the funny thing is, when you actually look at it and understand these again, the biggest mindfuck is that nobody's evil. There's no good guys or bad guys. There's different groups with different values who all believe that they're right. And they all believe that what's good for them is good for everyone. And the trick is to snap out of that and to stop projecting yourself onto the world. And everyone does this. So you have absolutists back in the Roman times and in Europe. spreading Christianity all across the world with force, with murder and death if need be. Why? Because they truly believed that by making everybody Christian, they would bring a heaven on earth. Well, the problem is people have different values. So as you Christianize the world, people just transpose their values onto Christianity. And so you've had schisms, you had the Protestant Reformation, the 30 Years' War, all these wars all being fought over the same fucking religion. Everyone converted to Christianity, you still have endless wars. Because
honestly,
everyone's...
I believe...
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, finish.
Well, my point is...
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying, I honestly don't believe that they even all believe that themselves. I believe that they just spread Christianity for power and nothing else.
Well, no, because the Catholic Church was very influential after the fall of Rome. My point is, though, is the absolutists believed that by converting everyone to one religion, they would be converting everyone to their values. But values are subjective. And values are all that matter. So when you... And you can see between Catholics and Protestants and evangelicals, you have a complete breakaway with entirely different values, even though they all ostensibly worship the same God. They all have the same Bible, they all pray and do everything the same, and yet they have completely different values. They express their political beliefs and their will completely differently because values are not universal. There is no objective right or wrong, good or evil. There's just differences in values and perceived self-interest. But that didn't stop people from forcibly converting people, waging wars in the name of trying to unify people under one God and one religion. And they did this for what they thought was for the good of everyone. By converting everyone to one religion, we're going to create world peace and all this peace and stability. That ultimately their goal is tradition and stability. So how do you ensure tradition and stability? Is everyone has to have the same traditions, i.e. the same religion, the same denomination. Everyone must be Catholic. Everyone must be whatever religion, everyone must be that. You're not allowed to be different denominations because that's different traditions. And so when everyone has the same traditions and the same values, then we'll have stability, then we'll have peace. And by doing this, they literally wage war on the entire world. Now, in the case of Christianity more or less won, with an asterisk, because they took over not just the Roman Empire, but Europe and America. Like, they Christianized basically the entire world. But what did it accomplish? You had the Eastern Orthodox Schism, you had the Protestant Reformation, all the different wars, the 30 Years' War, and then now everyone basically has turned from Christianity, and now they have nihilism. So, what did you accomplish by trying to Christianize everyone? You really accomplished shit. Now, the communists are doing the same thing. They believe that spreading their brand of equality and tolerance and stamping out any kind of differences in culture and race and whatever, they're going to make the world a better place. Well, what are they actually doing? They're just destroying economies and causing starvation and killing people. But they truly believe that they're the good guys. They truly believe that by destroying capitalism and nationalism and basically everything that allows people... without capitalism, just by the way, without all the things that capitalism created, there's no way we can sustain a population of 6 or 7 billion people. That is only possible due to this very intricate system of capitalist trade. When that is disrupted, billions of people will die. Billions. It will be the biggest death event in human history. All in the name of trying to make the world a better place. All in the name of stamping out inequality. They're going to kill billions of people. And but they're, again, just like the absolutists, they think they're doing it for the right reason. They think that by spreading their values of equality and tolerance and all these feel-good things, that they can create peace. It's perfectly summed up in that Beatles song or that John Lennon song, Imagine. Imagine no nations, no borders, everybody holding hands, everybody being equal. Doesn't it sound beautiful? But that is impossible. That's like heaven on earth utopian bullshit. It doesn't even make sense in the real world. But they think that by... I don't know what they think. They just think that by being angry and ring and deplatforming people and calling them Nazis, that they're going to like somehow accomplish the impossible. Who knows? But all they're doing is they're destroying economies, and they're going to end up collapsing everything, and then they themselves will starve to death. But, lest I be unfair, individualists, people who believe in freedom, do the same goddamn thing. Now, I'm not saying George Bush was like a libertarian. He wasn't. But, the whole justification for the war in Iraq and Afghanistan was that the way we defeat the terrorism, the way we stop Al-Qaeda, is by bringing them freedom. We're going to bring them democracy. We're going to give them our government, and that's going to bring peace to the Middle East. That's going to heal the wounds of all this generations and millennia of war. They see democracy and freedom, and that was fucking retarded, and it didn't work. It just created ISIS. We destroyed all these governments that were, but yeah, they were totalitarian. But like when we destroyed them, we just created ISIS. We didn't improve these countries. They weren't benefiting from democracy. So every single point of the triangle believes that their values are good, and to some degree they are. They're good for them. They're good for them and people who agree with their values. But they project onto the entire world that because their values are good for them, that those values must also be good for everyone else. And so we are going to use force and violence and war to spread our values and forcibly convert everyone to our beliefs. And if you resist us, we'll kill you, or we'll call you names or whatever. We'll call you a Nazi and punch you, or whatever. Like, basically, they all kill you. Like, whether we're talking communists, we're talking absolutists, we're talking even individualists. When you get it in your mind that everybody needs your values and everyone who opposes you is evil, you will justify killing them. You will tell yourself whatever story you need to justify killing everyone who disagrees with your values. And the fucked up thing is, the entire time, everyone was wrong. Everyone just needed to mind their own fucking business and leave people alone to live according to their own values. Stop projecting your values onto others. So whether you're an whether you're an absolutist, go ahead.
In terms of leaving people alone, I think individualist has the most highest probability of doing that, because a lot of times they depend on other people less, needing less from other people.
You think so, but then the problem is, you see this all throughout American history. People they want to use. You have a government built on freedom, and whenever you have freedom, you have prosperity, and you have all this. Good things happen, but then people want to use that stuff to try to spread. To some degree, it makes sense. You have a country, it's so prosperous, it's doing so well. Don't you want to share it with the world? And so you share it with the world, except you do it with war. You don't just say, hey, we have these really cool things. You want to learn more? And maybe you could do it, maybe not. Whatever. It's up to you. No, we're going to let's have a war. And we're going to force you to adopt our ways. And that's the problem. That is really the problem. We need to respect, stop trying to convert the heathen. Stop trying to civilize the barbarian. Stop trying to bring freedom to the Middle East. Stop trying to punch the Nazis. Just mind your own fucking business. And then we actually can't, is that going to create, kumbaya, utopia on Earth? No. But we can stop fighting. We can stop killing each other. We can get along. We could trade. I may not like your lifestyle, but I'll buy your shit. I go to kebab restaurants and get stuff. I have no desire to convert to Islam, but Muslims make really good food. And, halal, slaughter is kind of fucked up, but it's delicious. There's something. Oh yeah, there's something delicious really in the whole slitting a fucking lamb's throat and watching them bleed out on the floor. I don't know what it is. It makes the meat just so delicious. But anyway, I'm just saying, we can trade with each other. We can do business, even if we disagree with each other's lifestyles. Or I'm willing to. The problem is, no one else is. The absolutists, like what's funny is the absolutists are the smallest group. Their absolutism is not popular, at least not in America. I just did some rough calculations. There's probably only about 10% absolutists in America. Now, there's only about 13 to 15% individualists, with about 20, like about half. So you look at the political parties, left versus right. Oh, actually, hold on. I got another chart. Chart time. Let me pull this. Give me a second. There we go. All right. So here, oh my god. See, I need to get like a consistent size thing going. So I have to keep resizing these. All right. So here is why we can't have nice things in one chart. So we have basically the left is effectively united. They all believe in equality. The problem is most of the right does too. Most of the right is what I would call the religious right, which they share the same values as the communists. They just have a different god. The communists basically worship the state, and the religious right have Jesus. But progressivism came from Christianity, so they have the same values. So they all value equality. Here's the problem. So the left is 50% of the country, more or less. The right is made up of three groups: the individualist right, the absolutist right, and then the religious right. The religious right is the biggest group. I mean, you can see this. Look up, any kind of poll, any kind of anything. The evangelical Christians are the biggest block of the Republican Party. That's why the Republican Party, for those of you who are anti-Israel, the reason why the Republicans are like love to lick Israel's ass is because of the evangelicals. They literally think that by licking Israel's butthole, they're gonna cause the second coming of Jesus or something. So the evangelical Christians are the reason why the Republicans lick Israel's ass, in case you were wondering. And it's the evangelical Christians who are always throwing people under the bus who try to be effective. Like the reason why people like Trump was because Trump was more pro-America, pro-nationalist. He was going to stand up to Europe and China and bring jobs back. That was appealing. The problem is the religious right. What was their problem with Trump? Oh, he was divorced. He grabbed girls by the pussy. They had all these moral arguments against him. That's the religious right. So, unfortunately, if you look at this chart and understand, you realize just kind of how fucked America is, because the progressives are 75% of the population. 50% of them are on the left, but 25% are on the right. But they're the ones who always stab everyone else in the back. They're like, so the individualists, they're bigger than the absolutists, but even combined, even if the absolutists and the individuals put their differences aside, which would never happen, but even if they did, they would barely match the evangelical religious rights numbers, and then they would somehow have to make common cause with them to stand up against the communist left. And that's why the Overton window only keeps shifting to the left. Because the left already won. There was a time when the individualists ran the country, and then the Civil War happened, and then that stopped. And it's never come back. Absolutists never really had... Again, this is going back to that chart about the different ways to interpret the left versus right dichotomy. America was always founded on the individualist mentality. Americans generally see the left as collectivist and the right as individualistic. It's a very American thing because the founding fathers were individualists. Now, obviously, it's all fucked now. So the absolutists they don't really have a chance in America. They're big in Europe, but they're not big in America, and they probably never will be, especially not now. But now you know why. Now, again, these aren't hard numbers. You say give or take 5%. I'll give you a 5% margin of error with these numbers, but definitely within 5%. So that's why we can't have nice things. It's whatever. It is what it is. So those are my comments on Academic Agents series, Issues with Libertarian Arguments Against Socialism. And, the thing is I like Academic Agent. I can watch a reactionary or an absolutist. I like the distributist. I like Charlemagne. I like Mencius Moldbug. All of them are absolutists. But I can still like them and appreciate their perspective. Because I'm not saying this to humble brag, but I understand that it's not universal. So I can appreciate the perspective of people who disagree with me because I don't get offended by that, and I also don't project and assume they're wrong and I need to correct them. They have different values than me, and I want to respect their values if they'll respect my values. I want to be free. They can have their stability and their tradition, and they can do their thing. And even the commies, if they want to have their little equal society, they can go do that too. Just leave me alone. That's all I ask.